What's up, guys? So, my name is Angel. I'm here on my YouTube channel, Culture and God, and I've just been seeing a lot of videos going up called a hashtag walk away, why I left the left. And I thought it was about time that I kind of give my story and showcase why it was that I decided to have this big, drastic change of views that honestly some of my best friends don't even understand. So I want to start kind of at the beginning. So I'm 31 years old. When I was in high school, I was in garage bands. I played guitar. I listened to John Lennon, Imagine all day. That was like my credo for life. I love peace, love, and happiness. I was a total. I thought I was born in the wrong era. I wanted to be a hippie. I wanted to be at Woodstock, and I wanted to be peace, love, and happiness at all costs, through any cost. As I started going to college, I had some what do you call it? I had some experiences with depression. I had some experiences with social anxiety, and I left college and kind of came back. I went to college in Florida for a couple years, came back to Jersey, where I'm at now, and just started kind of working as a graphic designer, going to school for graphic design, and really diving into the world of digital marketing. Now, this is important because when you're in the space of digital marketing, you have to be very aware of current world trends so that you can capitalize on them for your clients and make them money. So I was starting to become more aware of everything that was going on, and around 2015, 14, when everything kind of started exploding politically, I decided to myself that I wanted to be educated about politics. It was by no means something that I wanted to speak out for. It wasn't that I was trying to be an activist. It was nothing like that. I just wanted to know what is the truth, like what are we really getting into. I did dive into some conspiracy theories. I was looking at InfoWars and stuff like that, and that it caught my attention, but in like a science fiction kind of way, like, oh, this is interesting, but there's no real way to prove it, so why would I listen to it? So I kept doing my homework and I kept doing my research. I would go read Washington Post articles, Huffington Post, and the more that I read and watched the Young Turks and stuff like that, the more confused I was, because my values were aligned to my faith, which was growing at the time, and everything that these people were talking about was very much compassionate, but for the sake of being performative. It wasn't necessarily like they were being compassionate because they were good people. They just wanted you to be compassionate in the same way that they are. So I kept looking around. I finally found John Oliver when he started doing his take. I loved the Daily Show back when it was what's his name, Jon Stewart, and I absolutely loved it. But I didn't understand anything. I just took it for the jokes. So by the time John Oliver came around, and Last Week Tonight, or whatever the show's called, I found it super interesting. So I listened to it attentively and I studied it, and I was like, okay, I want to understand. So what is the left? What is the right? What are all these things? And once I started calculating out the values of the left and the values of the right, I started to realize, contrary to what I've been told my entire life growing up, first generation American, where my dad was like, hey, Democrats are for the people, and the Republicans are for the corporations. Just hearing all those little things, like, oh, you're a Republican, you must be rich, stuff like that. Growing up, oh, you're a Republican, oh, you can't do that, you're betraying your people, just being a Hispanic, I'm Peruvian. But the more that I looked at the objective things that Republicans, or I'll say conservatives, align with versus what leftists or liberals, or even whatever you want to call them, Democrats, align with, the more I started to realize that I kind of line up more to the right. I think it's important to show here that because you align to the right does not mean you are far right. Far right is authoritarianism. So that means somebody like Hitler would be far right. He would be the most far right. And far left is chaotic. It's chaos. So it's Stalin-esque. It's Mao, or it's the guy Maduro in Venezuela. That's far left. So the more I started picking apart, so I'll lay out the things that really did it for me. So I always thought that family was important, and I think a lot of people that are in the Hispanic community do think family is important, and I saw that as a value of the right. I didn't see people talk about family the way that it should be talked about on the left. I looked at Young Turks, I looked at Vox, I looked at Jon Stewart, John Oliver, Trevor Noah, all of the heroes of the left, and none of them would talk about the fact that every kid needs a mother and father. Every kid needs a two-family household. It's one of the most beneficial things for a child's mind. And that was something that was so crucial to me, because not only did I love my family, but I also thought that family was something that you should be working towards, not something that you can just kind of take and rearrange however you want. I thought that there were implicit rules for how to be a good parent, and I wasn't seeing that on the left. Another thing that I wasn't seeing was your ability to think critically and question. Every time I would see somebody on the left, and this is, mind you, I'm submersed in leftist and liberal content at this point. Every time I would see somebody bring up something that they disagree with, which maybe I agreed with a little bit, like guns or something, like, yeah, you should be able to have a gun, I would see leftists trash that person. Like, just not even talk about the argument, just trash them as if they're subhuman. And I'm like, well, the guy has a good point. It's not like he's saying anything wrong. And that slowly started to progress more and more. Then I would find out little things like the lyrics to John Lennon's Imagine, which I had as a huge poster on my wall when I was a teenager, were actually lyrics that I don't agree with. Imagine there's no heaven. I don't want to imagine that. Imagine no religion, no possessions. I'm like, no, I like my possessions. I like my camera. I like my microphone. I like all these things. It's easy if you try. One, no hell below us, above us only sky. It's like, so what would we be living for? And it was the ideology of it. It was the overall theology that these people believed in that I just couldn't back anymore. Like, so I started researching more. I found people like Jordan Peterson, and I started researching the people that he researches. So Carl Jung, Alexander Solzhenitsyn, and I'm reading about this, and I'm finding out that what they're describing is the left today. It's nihilism, which means nothing really means anything. That's what nihilism is. It's like, oh, well, if nothing means anything, then why should we try at all? Why should we care at all? Why should we have any values? Postmodernism, where it's like nothing really has rules. There's no such thing as objective truth. And I was like, well, I don't believe that in the slightest. And so now I'm starting to find myself like, well, I want to be a Democrat. I want to be on the left. I want to be a liberal. But by its definition today, I'm not at all. Like, I believe there's a right and a wrong. I believe there's a good and a bad. I believe there's a heaven and a hell. I believe that there's a mother and a father. I believe that kids should be raised in the gender that they're born, which God forbid. God forbid. I should suggest that if you're born with a penis, then you should be a man for the rest of your life. God forbid. Who would have thought that was crazy? Or that men and women are intrinsically different? These are things that were benign, common sense opinions that I've had my entire life because that's how I was raised. That's what I knew to be true. And those little things started to add up to the point where I was like, no, I can't associate myself with people that, first of all, tell me my experience as a Hispanic man can't be... my experience as a Hispanic man doesn't count as much as an experience of a black man in America. And I'm like, I grew up with people who are black. None of them felt depressed. Most of them felt like, yo, I need to get out of the hood. That's what it was. Back when I was a kid, the goal was to get out. It wasn't to stay in, or the goal was to own the block. Like, yo, I can't wait to come up. I'm going to own my own barbershop. I'm going to own my own store, and I'm not going to work for anybody. And all of those thoughts as I got older started to get convoluted, and the people who held those thoughts started to lose hope in themselves. And that's what made for this different mindset of like, yo, somebody's keeping me down. There's a big bad man, the white man who's not letting me be an owner. But really, it's like the way I look at it as a Hispanic, it's like there's not many Hispanics in this country that have been here for more than 2 or 3 generations. We're brand new to this country. Being black in America is probably the most American thing you can be, because you are part of the history of this country. I'm not part of the history of this country. I'm here, and I've inherited America. And so when I see people that say, oh, you're Hispanic, you're a minority, you're oppressed, I'm like, no, I just haven't figured out the rules just yet. I haven't figured out how everything goes. My mom had to teach herself how to fill out a FAFSA form for me for when I went to college. I had to figure out what banking was and a banking loan and why I should have a bank account. And I don't blame anybody for that. The only people I blame are my dad, but really it wasn't even his fault. He's coming from Peru, which was at the time not a first world country in the slightest. It's gotten a lot better, thank God. But for me, it was less about finding somebody to blame and more about how do I get myself out of the situation. And I realized that even that value in itself was a now considered a right value. Like, pull yourself up by your bootstraps is now like offensive. How is it offensive for me to say to somebody, you need to do better, you need to better yourself so that you can better your own situation? Isn't that common sense? But now there's some magical oppressor that has been stopping me as a minority from succeeding. And I'm looking at my life, and I'm looking at the fact that my credit was shot by the time I was 20, that I have all these student loans, and that my dad left my mom. Like, I'm looking at all this stuff and thinking, for the most part, these are choices. Like, my dad made that choice. I made the choice to sign that paperwork to go to college. There's no predatory loan that put my hand to the paper and said, you're going to take this loan. It's like, I made those choices because I was ill-informed. Education and knowledge is what's really going to set me apart from what's considered to be a Hispanic minority. And I never looked at myself as a Hispanic minority. I was one of 2 brown kids in my entire grade, and there were no black kids in my school. And they didn't treat me differently. As a matter of fact, my teachers treated me just as harshly as any other kid, and they told me I didn't have the grades to get into the high school I wanted to, because I wanted to go to a private school. So when they told me that, I worked my ass off, and I got into that high school. Nobody stopped me. I wasn't an affirmative action acceptance. I got into that school because I worked my ass off, and then when I got into that school, I was on the dean's list for like 2 years. And then I transferred to public school, and I ruined my life because I wanted to be around friends. But these are the perceptions that the left has of the right. That these are somehow obscene or offensive opinions, and it just goes to show that we criticize people for becoming successful and not giving their knowledge to people who aren't successful yet. When in reality, when people do become successful and give their knowledge, people take it as an insult. Like, I remember meeting, going to VaynerMedia, which is Gary Vee's company, and meeting some of the people there. And I would ask them, like, what's the secret? How do you guys get as good as you do? And they would always say, work hard, put out more content, which is a big thing in digital marketing. Do the work. And I would always just be like, yeah, I get that, but what else? Like, was it luck? Is it do you have connections? And they're like, yeah, connections are good, but if you don't deliver and you didn't do the work, then you're still stuck. And I feel like that's the big disconnect, and that's what really pushed me away from the left more than anything. It was the idea that learning more and bettering yourself was somehow treating yourself like you were not oppressed, and therefore that was bad. And so here I am, 31, I'm living in Jersey, and now Trump is running for re-election, and I'm thinking to myself, and I'm looking at what's going on with Black Lives Matter, who, by the way, just because I don't support the cause of Black Lives Matter, the movement, the name of the movement, doesn't mean that the statement itself is not true. Of course Black people's lives matter. What normal, good person would not agree with the fact that Black people's lives matter? But when you attach the name Black Lives Matter to a political organization that's standing for transgender rights, that wants to dismantle the patriarchy, that wants to get rid of the nuclear family, which means that they don't want mother and father in the household. They want a tribe to raise your children, a tribe of liberal people, or leftist people, I'd have to say. And they don't believe in identifying yourself with what you think and what your character is, but instead they identify you by the color of your skin, and they place you into categories. Well, you're male, so you're not as oppressed, but you're also a Hispanic, so you're a little bit more oppressed, but not as oppressed as Black people, so we can only listen to you a certain degree. And to me, that sounds like some ass backwards science that doesn't make any sense. And I'm no good at science, so I can honestly say most science doesn't make sense to me, but it doesn't make sense at a regular human functioning level. Just because I'm a Hispanic male, if there's a Hispanic female next to me and they're doing a better job, people are going to pick her. or just because I'm a Hispanic male and maybe there's a black male next to me, and I do a better job, I'm gonna get the job. But if he does a better job, he's gonna get it. I'm Hispanic. I'm 31 years old. I've lived in Jersey most of my life. I lived in Florida, which is the South, and I've never experienced a drop of systemic racism. Have I experienced people being jerks and just calling me a spick or saying something off color about me being a minority or giving me a weird look? Sure, but those people are assholes. Those people are racist assholes or prejudiced assholes because they don't know me. They may not feel superior to me based on the color of their skin, but they think I'm different. So they treat me different, which is prejudice. That's not racism. So here I am, and now Trump is running for re-election, and I'm seeing all of these things come to the forefront in the people that are around me, and it's pushing me even further away, especially from the church. I'm seeing people in the church that are preaching from the pulpits that there's this systemic racism in our country, and I'm looking around like, where? The police force? The police force has killed 11 unarmed black men in the last year. And just saying that now would get me in trouble with anybody on the left. Anybody on the left would be like, yeah, but that's not what it's about, and that's not how it should be, blah, blah, blah. 11 too many, guaranteed. But it's not. But the narrative right now is they're slaughtering black men on the streets for doing nothing, and that is just not true. That is not true. And I know plenty of cops, and every cop that I know is a stand-up guy who has great moral values and loves and takes pride in his job. And for me, that's what finished pushing me over the line to where now I'm not afraid to say anything. Because if I can't say that something you're saying is a lie and you're misinformed without being called a racist myself, a Hispanic, then now you've lost me. And that's why I left the left.